This is what a regular drip looks like. This is what a bad drip looks like. Melanie Joly is about to have a couple of bad drips. Stay tuned. Watch what's coming up.
Moon Highway, you and Christia chugging Crown and Coke again?
Sober since 2019. Worse than tequila nightmares.
We will be there for our people, period. That's no question. I presented a plan last week, which was basically saying we will protect jobs, we will create jobs, and we will also attract talent and investment. So what we'll do for softwood lumber is part of that first priority, which is to protect jobs. And we know we don't agree with these tariffs. So in the circumstances where the negotiations are still continuing, we'll make sure that we're there for our people. Wait, question.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. We have our Minister of Industry, Melanie Joly. She's got a couple of issues, no doubt about that. She's delivering a presser, but watch this girl under pressure. Then she zips right over to the CTV newsroom to do an interview with Vassy Kapelos, who is a liberal cheerleader who will help cover up the issues that Melanie Joly has and sell some liberal propaganda. Let's see how it goes.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
And meet him in Washington. That's why also it was important for the delegation to be with Prime Minister Carney. Why? Because President Trump mandated his team to negotiate. And so from then on, Dominique LeBlanc stayed in Washington, Michael Sabia as well, and last night I was over the phone with Michael Sabia again, who was in Washington still negotiating with Jimison Greer, who is the U.S. Trade Representative. So we'll continue to engage. Meanwhile, we take stock of what happened on softwood lumber. We obviously don't agree with it, but we're there for businesses. And we will make sure that not only we are there through our regional development agencies, such as DEC in Quebec, but also through the BDC, but also fundamentally what we need to do is we need to buy more Canadian. We need to help our workers in the sector. We need to be there for the softwood lumber industry, and a company like here today is showing that's the case. Because what are you seeing across this plant? You're seeing that there is softwood everywhere, and this will be part of the construction of our new houses, our new homes in the coming months. So that's good news as well, but we need to do more.
We'll start today with that high-stakes meeting in the Oval Office. Prime Minister Mark Carney was in Washington this week for his second in-person White House visit with U.S. President Donald Trump. But despite months of ongoing talks, Carney came home again without a new deal, though he's promised material progress has been made. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, meanwhile, threw cold water on the idea of a comprehensive deal on autos this week, telling the audience at a Canada-U.S. summit that the U.S. could continue buying parts from Canada, but, quote, that's about it. So where does the relationship stand now, and how likely or unlikely is a new deal? Industry Minister Melanie Joly was at that meeting in D.C. this week. She joins me now.
Let's go.
Hi, Minister Joly. Pleasure to welcome you back to the program. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you.
I wanted to start.
It's a pleasure, Vassy. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. It's a little bit of a delay. My apologies. You just returned from Washington, D.C. and the meeting with President Trump. I wanted to ask you point blank, is there any prospect of either reductions in American auto tariffs on Canadian autos or an auto deal of any sort? Is there any prospect of either of those things?
So listen, I won't go into the details of the negotiation. What you heard from the Prime Minister is at this point is we're looking to have a deal on steel, aluminum, and also energy projects. So this is what is being worked on. But we know also that we need one on auto, and we need one on copper, and we need one also on lumber, because these are all tariff industries. So we're going into an approach where we are doing one at a time. But at the same time, we will continue to fight for our auto workers. That's clear.
I do want to, though, based on what you just said, in combination with what we heard from Howard Lutnick, ask you about the prospect of one. I understand that you don't want to, disclose the details of the negotiations, but do I take from what you just said and what we heard from the Prime Minister that there won't be any deal on autos anytime soon? Howard Lutnick was pretty much explicit that Canada, he said, should come second to the United States, that maybe they'll continue buying parts, but nothing really beyond that. Is that your understanding? And if so, how consequential is that?
Well, I think the only person in the U.S. administration that decides is the president himself. So you saw a positive meeting this week between the Prime Minister and the President. The tone was respectful, and obviously the President directed his team to work with our team to make sure ultimately that we'll land on a deal. And the challenge that the Prime Minister of Canada has, and any leaders in the world have, is to attract the attention, to get the attention from the president, who has many other things to deal with, including a ceasefire in the Middle East. So that's what Prime Minister Carney was able to do. Meanwhile, of course, I, like you, heard the comments from the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and my message to Canadians, particularly Canadians and workers working in the auto sector, is we will fight for every single job in the auto sector, because these are our jobs, these are Canadian jobs, and we believe in the sector.
You announced this week in a speech that you delivered the sort of main tenets of how you envision the industrial policy for this country to take shape over the term of your government. And I wanted to drill down into a little bit of what you put forward, in particular against the backdrop of what's going on with the United States, because at that meeting, a number of people from your government communicated to reporters that the prospect, for example, of reviving Keystone was brought up in order to reduce steel and aluminum tariffs. Your policy that you announced this week is very much focused on generating a more robust domestic supply chain and domestic capacity to serve our own needs. How do you reconcile those two things? Keystone would make us even more dependent on the United States. You're pitching the opposite. How does that make sense?
So I won't go into the Keystone project, because this is a decision for the Prime Minister to make. But what I can tell you, though, is that we need major projects across the country to be able to support our steel industry and to be able to support our auto industry. And when it comes to certain natural resources, we have them in abundance, and we can, work on being able to benefit from the fact that we have so many of these resources. At the same time, there are some that are extremely strategic, including, for example, critical minerals. And we know that Canada has an edge, that we need to attract capital investments in these mining sectors, critical mining sectors, but at the same time that we be very mindful of what we're doing, because obviously there's an entire world competition for accessing these critical minerals. So what I presented this week was a strategy, Vassy, that was about protecting jobs, obviously in the tariff sectors, and you and I just talked about it, steel, aluminum, auto, copper, and lumber, but also, while there's lots of unpredictability in this world, while we're living in a much more complicated and dangerous world, we will be able also to create jobs. And also we'll be able, and that's the third pillar of the strategy, to attract talent and attract investments. And how will we create jobs for our viewers at home right now that are asking themselves, how can we do so? Well, there are a lot of things we can't control, particularly geopolitics, but there are things we can control, and we can invest in defense. That's what we're doing. We'll have a defense industrial strategy to create jobs in the manufacturing sector for construction people, welders, for researchers, for engineers, architects. So lots of people, thousands of jobs through these defense investments. We'll invest in major projects. We've already announced the latest round of projects, including the LNG second phase in BC, the Port of Montreal, the Darlington small modular reactor for nuclear energy in Ontario, and that will generate thousands of jobs. And finally, we will build strong Canadian companies.
But you and your cabinet colleagues, the Prime Minister, have often, particularly let's take the example of defense procurement, talked about spending 75 cents on the dollar right now in the United States. And I guess my question is, it feels as though there's two different messages going on. We might invest more, we might become more interdependent on defense and security and energy with the United States, but also we're supposed to make ourselves whole through this other policies, other suite of policies that we're going to pursue. Like, how can those two things be true at once? And will your government articulate like something we can hold you accountable to? Like, by this point, we will be this much diversified, or we will have built out this much additional defense industrial capacity. Because right now you're making a lot of promises without a lot of specifics.
Well, you know, we've made very specific that we would be increasing 2% of our GDP in defense by the end of this year, and that's $9 billion more. We all need that, because if one day Canada is not is basically facing many threats, we need to be able to defend ourselves. So that's what we're working on, and that's where you'll see a lot of investments being done. And we are over-dependent on the U.S. We know that. So we take stock of that, and we will make sure to do the right investments. But, you know, there is indeed, I think it's important to remember that we won't have the same relationship with the U.S. We will diversify our markets, but at the same time, we're still the neighbor of the U.S., and that will be a reality that we will continue to do trade with the U.S. That's just the reality of being neighbors and our geography.
And as far as like the first part of what you just explained, right, and the content of, for example, the policy that you announced, when will Canadians, and I acknowledge, you know, you're 6 months in, but you're making very distinct promises about a time of crisis, which is the way that your government and the Prime Minister have characterized the moment that we're in. Like, when will Canadians begin to see the benefits? Because right now we've got GDP data out of the second quarter that shows our economy versus other countries in the G7 is contracting at the fastest pace. You've got exports to other places in the world outside of the U.S. for a third month in a row declining. Growth in wages has slowed to the worst rate since 2016 outside of 2020 and COVID. So my question against the backdrop of all those very alarming statistics for a number of Canadians is, like, when will they start to see the benefits of what you're pitching?
Well, I think you have to look at the Friday numbers of jobs. 60,000 new jobs created across the country. We're increasing wages by 3.3% over a year to year in July. So things are not perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm very realistic. But hey, we're facing so much unpredictability, and we are actually facing these headwinds in a strong position. And the September numbers are extremely good news. So I think we should be optimistic. Well, you know, there is bumps and you know, while we're flying this plane, we're holding strong and we're going ahead.
The unemployment rate, though, is still 7.1%, which is a multi-year record.
Vassy.
I acknowledge that there were far more jobs added last month than anticipated, but that's still a very high unemployment rate. The youth unemployment rate is like at a decades level high.
But I'm just saying, we just increased by 60,000 jobs in a month. So I think it shows that it's moving.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. I've taken enough of your time, Minister. I appreciate it as always. Thank you.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney. One of the things about doing a channel like the one I do, which is giving honest information, is that if you don't click the like, the bell, get notified, the subscribe, one of those options, you won't see these videos. They do screen this stuff. I've been fighting this battle since the day we began, but whatever. It's an uphill battle. We're willing to face it. Let's just have those subscriptions rolling in. Get notified for the live shows. They're always a good time. We've got the greatest chat room online. That come and verify it for yourself. It's a fact. Check it out. Aaron, Kennedy, and Looney, like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching this one. Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics. Get yours right here.
I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain.
Potential conflicts of interest
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance.
Speaker, we will take no lessons from these conservatives, Mr. Speaker. Canadians have heard the leader of the opposition. We advocate for crypto to Canadians.
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Steps We call on the big grocers to be part of the solution. We express the frustration of millions of Canadians. We ask them to come with concrete plans to stabilize prices. On this side of the House and this caucus, we'll fight for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.